Oh, man, dude.
Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah, so we were talking, it's been like about a year since we've seen each other.
Last played tennis about a year ago.
Yeah, it was
Whooped
fun.
your ass.
Yeah, you did, dude.
No.
I mean, I got
You were
whooped.
just picking it back up again.
Yeah, well, so I never was like huge in it. I played with a friend in high school, and he kind of taught me it. And I remember the first time I did it, like I went home sore.
Yeah.
And I like that feeling. You know what I mean? Like,
It's a bit of a like an adrenaline high.
yeah,
Just running all those like sprints basically back and forth.
Yeah.
You get that exercise high.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you feel really good when you win a point. That hard work paid off.
absolutely.
And if you're doing singles, I think it is even more rewarding. I played doubles for a long time, and it's just like the problem I had with doubles was just like you were always like relying on this other half, and like sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't. Other times you wanted to be the one to like make a particular play. And so when I transitioned over to singles, I really only play singles anymore. It's just like a lot more of a empowering feeling for me to play singles. Like it's all on you.
Yeah.
And I've played a lot of team sports, and tennis is really my only solo sport. So
Yeah.
having that feeling, it was very, very fun. Like it was a good way when I was younger. I played just throughout my childhood. In high school, did pretty well. And yeah, that was always like my favorite part, was just eventually getting to singles. I started out in doubles in competition, got good enough to go to singles, and it was so much better.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because like I feel like with like soccer, right? You were a soccer player as well. I was
Volleyball.
a huge soccer player, and like I would say maybe 80% of like the learning curve for me for soccer throughout my whole career. I played from, when I was, I don't know, Mom, I'm going to get this wrong, probably like 6. I want to say 6 sounds right?
Yeah.
6 to when I was about 18, 19. And it was all about the 80% of it was about learning how to work with other people.
Absolutely.
And like learning the flow of the game, learning the strategy of the game, having a team that you've been together with for like 4 or 5 years, so how this person plays, how fast this person is.
Absolutely.
So you like, because you can
anticipation and what they're going to do. It's almost like reading their mind at some point.
absolutely
You get years into it.
and that's a good feeling too,
absolutely.
of that, we're in sync kind of thing. But you can work on your touches, you can sprint all you want, you can get as physically amazing as you want, but once you get into the team aspect, if you're not able to sync with the rest of the team, it's useless and your team's going to be shit. Frankly, the team that I have that I love, I just saw one of my friends from childhood yesterday from this team. What that was kind of our problem is like we were all just hotheads, we were just hothead, egotistical people, and we all wanted it, some of it was like glory, but
Spotlight.
we wanted the fun, right? Like and sometimes if you're just observing and you're playing like a really team-oriented game, it's just like you get maybe 10 touches the whole game. Sure. The rest is just positioning and like planning and like running back and forth.
And you look at some of the great teams in soccer, Barcelona in their heyday, doing this tiki-taka pass thing where it's just pass, shot, and it probably went in because of all this build-up. And I'll tie it into restaurant work. I mean,
please,
being on so many team sports, having that feeling of camaraderie, it definitely comes through in a restaurant setting as well.
Yeah.
The best places I've worked have the best team aesthetic feel. Everyone's in this together, committed equally, and wanting the best for the organization. That goes and translates between restaurants and sports. You get to the spots where it's not that, and you're like, why is this job so hard? Like the money could still be like really good. The ambiance could be really nice in the restaurant, but it just weighs on you a little bit more. And then you go to somewhere else because restaurant people love to hop around.
Yeah.
And you can sense a difference every time you walk into a different restaurant. And I've been in restaurants full time for about 6 years now. I say full time. I might have been doing other jobs as well as restaurants 5 to 6 days a week. I started in financial aid out of college for higher education. So working in Boston. I did a little spell in admissions too, and even was a tech recruiter for like a really short spell too. And all those day jobs like just were not for me.
Yeah.
Not exciting enough. I thought I was going for these things, these particular reasons, and they never kind of panned out. And restaurants was always a team aesthetic, a team feeling, an excellent like spot for me to work, and the hours that I kind of felt like I was more alive. Anyways, I'm not necessarily a morning person.
Yeah.
So being up and staying late, actually, I don't mind too often, especially if I can get bed, by midnight, which a lot of places do close down now at a reasonable hour, especially with COVID. But yeah, restaurants for a while. We worked obviously together for what, a year and a half, 2 years? How long was it?
I don't know if it was that long.
Not even?
Not even. I mean, we definitely grew a bond quickly.
Yeah.
Because I think that I look at the restaurants in very much the same way. Mm-hmm. And if we want to get down to brass tacks with how offensive and defensive really, soccer teams work, really it's it's kind of the same with the kitchen and the front of house, right? Like we have different roles, but we're definitely on the same team, and we're constantly passing the ball back and forth. And then there's there's the midfielders who kind of help with that transition from. I mean, you could say it's expo, but it's
it could be bartenders.
Well, it's I like to think of the pre-shift, right?
Sure.
That's kind of as the ball is transitioning from, you just defended an attack on the goal and you're moving the ball up the field. Now it's at midfield. That's where we're all coming together, right? That's
shift.
Yeah. And
okay.
So the sous chef or the CDC and the front of house manager are the captains and the midfielders, sure. And they're making sure that everything is transitioning right.
I like that.
But yeah, I mean, I think you might be right. It might have been a year and a half. It was probably getting close to a year and a half when the shutdown happened, and that's kind of what ended Public. I mean, there was all kinds of issues, and I've talked with Justin on the show about how he kind of was operating these different restaurants, and there was some of them were being more successful, and some of them were losing money. And I think that I would be proud to say that we got Public in the black while I was there, which was it was a big accomplishment, in my opinion, because it had been in the red for 3 years or something crazy.
Nobody seemed to care, but
yeah.
And when you talk about upper management ownership,
I mean, it was just
they had reasons that they were just we'll run it this way, and it took Justin buying it, obviously, and then a change in personnel in the kitchen, change in personnel in the management staff, and I think some other serious people getting on board at the lower levels, like yourself, like myself, some other really good servers who worked hard, and it eventually flipped around pretty quickly, because what I think happened with Lowertown, St. Paul Lowertown, is unfortunately other spots were starting to get picked off slowly but surely. Places were closing. World of Beer had to do construction, closed down. Kelly's got bought out, closed down. Other spots just were not surviving, and Public might have gotten a little bump in that because of those closures. But I also think that Public transformed what it wanted to do on its menu, what we were doing with its drink list, and people saw that. They liked the patio still. We had one of the biggest patios in Lowertown, and those were all great things that allowed us to, reach the black and come back around in a short period of time.
Yeah, I mean, it was really awesome. It showed me kind of the power of food, the power of a menu, the power of a drink menu, because
good pairings.
And it all comes back to teamwork, right? Because when I got there, it was very disjointed, right? For good reason. There's no blame on anybody. I talk about all these different restaurants and all their negative aspects. It's I'm never really talking shit about any specific people, right?
Sure.
The people that were there were all there for different reasons.
And we're all victims of the moment, too. So whatever the circumstances of that moment, too, all play a factor, not just the people.
Yeah.
So, there are constraints that we don't even know about that I'm sure all these people had on them, too. And it was a hard place to manage.
But after a couple months, we were this is what we want to do with the menu. We did it, right? And then... And it didn't just happen. You know what I mean? We struggled through it, right? Aaron and I talk about our Valentine's Day celebration. That was,
interesting.
Which was mostly my fault because I'm
Did we get too ambitious?
Well, you talked about how like you love the restaurants because it's exciting, right? I have romanticized this profession, this art form, and this way of life for pretty much my entire life, right? Especially since I was a kid. And so I want to go as hard as we possibly can.
Especially on a day like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's like I know how special Valentine's Day can be, and that, like we have all this room. Public was a great space for Valentine's Day, and like it was just when we were like all gaining speed. It's kind of like we were talking about in soccer, right? You pass the ball to Julian on the right side, and you're like, oh, I knew exactly where he's gonna be. All right, let's amp it up a little bit,
sure,
right? And that's how I felt. But the first night of Valentine's Day, dude,
service. Yeah.
Oh my God. It was, and this is why I say it was mostly it was mostly my fault. It was just like I crushed myself, right? It was one of those things where I didn't put enough trust in my team. I just didn't realize how stacked my station was,
right.
And like so. But once I was already crushed. It wasn't like
they're not coming back from that.
Yeah, it's like Gavin came over and he's like, "How can I help you?" And I'm like, "Dude, I literally have a pyramid of fucking pans right now. I have no idea.
Yeah,
like I have no idea. We're screwed. We just got to get through it."
Knowing what I know now, a couple years afterwards, and continuing to manage places, I would have staggered the pacing of our guests a little bit better for you. We could have definitely thought that out a bit better.
Yeah.
Well,
and the next day though, this is my point, is that Saturday we had just as good of a day, right? It was the day after Valentine's Day, and we ruined a couple people's Valentine's Day. That's the part that like really sucks for me. It's like we still made money.
You hate
right?
giving anyone bad service ever.
Yeah,
it is not why we're in this game.
So. Yeah, and they're like, and it's just like, dude, I'm sorry. I wish I could just prostrate myself, in front of your table and be like, dude, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry, but then Saturday came and it went off without a hitch.
Yeah.
Right. And
this game is also about adjustments.
Absolutely.
And learning on the fly and being able to problem solve. And I think the best people are who rise to the top of that. And it's definitely fixable in a lot of cases. Restaurants have the resources to fix the small things that go wrong. Like we're talking about a build up in one station. You just delegate better, right? And because you know how to do that, of your years in service at restaurants, it's a quick fix.
That's
the next night.
That's why I like you. I think that's why we've become close. I feel like me going, "That's why I like you, kid," is kind of degrading. That's not how I meant it. I think that's why we became friends, right?
Sure.
Because like we'd have a service and it'd be a great service, right? But there'd be like one or two things that happened either with your service or somebody who was like working with you or under you, and you were so receptive to everything that I said. It was like, Allie, I call her out on the show all the time. She was great, right? So like, let's say it was like Allie, I don't know. She put it in this ticket at this period of time, sure. And like we were stacked, and like she, maybe bring.
How about just a classic like triple ring in?
Yeah,
you take 3 tables orders, you ring them all in at once. Only one server does that, but you have 3 other servers on the floor on a Friday night. We're also putting in their 3 tickets. You get 6 tickets at once as a restaurant. That's daunting. Guess what? There's going to be like 2 more in 5 minutes. There'll be 2 more after that in 5 minutes. You know how that ticker goes. You have the nightmares that we all have. Just like something small like that, it takes a small conversation. It takes an adult to have it, where it's not an insulting conversation to your server. Just small stuff like that. I think, like we're talking about, easy fixes if you know what to do. And talk to people.
It's Cliff Notes,
this
man.
This restaurant game is all about being personable.
Yeah.
As well. So have the people skills. And you can have the conversations with just about anyone about a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's bad.
Yeah, I like that. That was one thing at Public is we were usually able to have that conversation, not just you, but like the entire staff. And if we weren't able to have that conversation with somebody on the staff, then it was like, okay, well, it's time to find somebody new.
Sure.
But enough about public. It's in the past. We're in the present.
Sure.
Where are you at now? Let's talk a little bit about Brother Justus.
Sure, yeah. I work at a whiskey company called Brother Justus. We are located in the Northeast over by Columbia Golf Course, kind of in the industrial section. We are a youngish company, been in production since 2014 at a much smaller scale. And we just recently ramped up, got a new facility, bought thousands of gallons of tanks, and now have started to ramp up our production, and we'll start being back on shelves because we ran out pretty quickly with just how popular we are, just how many people are coming to the tasting room. It's better than we've been expecting, and people have been enjoying the product, so it's good to see. Yeah, I can talk about the bar program first.
Yeah, let's go. Get into it a little bit.
Well, the bar program was created by our bar manager, Jonathan, who comes from a bunch of different places, right? Norseman Distilling, Kado no Mise, all these great restaurants with very, very particular palates. Right? Norseman did a lot of different things with production. So he comes from a very high-end like beverage background.
Yeah, dude, Kado no Mise is... I mean, that's about as...
Vine whiskey for quite a bit.
Yeah.
For quite a long time. And so he came in with just this great personality, had a good group of wonderful people that he'd worked with in the past. You know, I think designing your own team is really important wherever you are in the restaurant. Knowing what the restaurant's needs are and then getting people who are going to play to those strengths. If you just need some place that's like high volume, maybe order taking brunches that go bananas like crazy, right? You can get away with different personnel than if you need someone who is in a tasting room who needs to sit down and have a conversation with a table for 5 to 10 minutes about whiskey tasting notes and do a little bit of a show and dance.
Yeah.
It's definitely a different skill.
Yeah.
And so selecting people who can do that kind of stuff efficiently and fast, and it's also a skill.
Yeah.
And he's done a great job. We have other people on the team that I've been helping with cocktail ideas, and he's also gotten quite a few. So this first couple iterations of our menus that have gone out are a lot of his babies. Really, really cool collaborations with different chefs and local POC owners, business owners. So we do a collaboration with a coffee company. We do a collaboration with the Sencha Tea company. Houston White, is the coffee company.
Yeah.
Get Down Coffee. Sencha Tea is the other one. And then Chef Yi Vang, we collaborated with him for 2 different cocktails already, and 2 for the others as well. So we like to keep our menu fresh and updated, obviously seasonality, but having that connection with people in the industry on a deeper level with our cocktails has also been really cool. And we'll definitely be continuing that in the future.
Wow, I didn't know that. I mean, I don't do much research for the show,
Sure.
but it's the fact that you're doing those collaborations, I think, is really cool. That's kind of what this show has become, is all about everybody in Minnesota, and then, as you said, POC is kind of like the next step of like really integrating making sure that everybody's equally integrated. And then I feel like Yia is like he's kind of the pinnacle of that, right?
He's such a lovable guy.
Because it's like we're on the east side, and I talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
I even talked about it when I had Ewan on. Like I grew up on the east side, and it was like the billboards were in Hmong, right? Like it's a huge Hmong population on the east side of St. Paul, and not just like a displaced population. It's like they are like the blood of the community, if you will, the pulse of the kid, whatever. I'm not gonna just blow smoke up people's asses. It's like they're important to the community, right? They're politicians, they're cops, but you never saw
one represented necessarily in the restaurant industry.
Yeah,
as much as he has been.
Yeah, absolutely.
What he's done for
absolutely. I mean, really at all. I mean, you might see different types of like small Hmong places kind of pop up on the east side, but they would disappear pretty quickly for a variety of reasons. Like that's one thing that like I don't think people understand too much is like there are so many ways that people get over on people in the restaurant industry, and that's kind of where that people of color problem comes into play, right? Like I had a chef over in Blaine, and like as he got more successful, the rent just went up and up and up and up and up and up until like he couldn't afford it, right? And he just like, and it was so sad when he had to close. Shout out Chef Tim, he's doing a food truck now. I mean, that kind of like sidesteps that, but I'll stay on topic. I mean, it was so sad when he had to close his restaurant because it was so good. The community loved it, and like he had kind of figured out his books too, right? It's not like he was being irresponsible. It was just like he was getting railroaded by this guy, right? Sure. And
well, I'm sure the guy saw how successful he was.
Absolutely,
he could charge more. Yeah,
absolutely, and it's like that. And then you add on, things like. Let's say if that guy's racist and Tim's Hmong, right? That's just enhanced times 5, But yeah, so I'm glad that you guys are doing that. Now, do you have a food menu at all, or is that
that is in the works? That is in the works currently.
Yeah, that's awesome.
There's a lot of thought being put into what would pair well with our drinks and our whiskey in general, and I think we want to do it right. So we did have a collaboration. We were doing small charcuterie boards with Chef Amalia from Basil House Catering, and we stopped that just a couple weeks ago as we transition into this new phase. I believe she will still be a part of it in a different fashion. We'll have some different small bites, different platters, and like I said, they're thinking about it. So it's all been a work in progress as things in the COVID year have just been slowed down and slowed down and slowed down. So we had hit plenty of our own roadblocks and got through them. And so we just are taking it, one day at a time.
Can we talk about some of those roadblocks?
Sure.
Because, I started this show during COVID, right? Yeah. So it's been kind of like a common theme of like seeing, I don't know, we had all these theories about how everything's going to go and how people are going to react, but they were theories, right? And they were looks into the future. And now I kind of have the opportunity to go, what happened and how did you guys get through it?
Yeah, look back on it.
Yeah, a little bit. So let's reflect.
Well, before I even got there, I think there were issues with just equipment being delivered. I mean, that really was the theme throughout the months that I've worked there from the beginning. Just in the back, production equipment, big tanks, bottling line equipment, that kind of stuff that was either made overseas and then needed to be transported over here and was just slowed down due to various reasons. Just took months longer. Yeah. And that set back production a lot more. So, which made everything else on the timetable of the tasting room opening, making sure that we could get back on shelves, everything got pushed back. And there were still question marks because you're just pushing it back more and more because you still haven't scaled anything yet. That's very important. If you were just moving from one facility where you had the exact same scale to a different facility, I'm sure it would have been much easier for them to eventually get the equipment and then start right in on production. But because you are scaling it so much larger than what you were doing and this very much smaller still, that requires a lot more time and thoughtfulness because we're not going to put out a subpar product. So, that takes time. And so the biggest thing was, tankards. I know probably some like equipment for the tasting room was held back, furniture, that kind of stuff. So those were the roadblocks that I think they hit. And thank goodness they're all over now because business has been great.
Yeah.
I mean, people really were very receptive to us right from the beginning. We opened up back in February for the tasting room, but we had been on shelves obviously before that, and sales were good. Sales went even better because we do sell on location as well. Minnesota laws allow you to only sell these size bottles currently at a distillery.
On location?
Yeah, on location at a distillery. But you can find the bigger ones in liquor stores. So that is kind of like a restraint on us that I'm hoping will get lifted, in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
There's going to be some changes on the liquor policies. I know already on the ballot. So.
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, run it. I love to hear that. There was one thing that you said that interested me because I've had discussions because, you talk about how restaurant people love to jump around.
Sure.
I have jumped around, and I have, I have people in almost all the big restaurants, right?
Yeah. When you go through your list of people or experiences you've talked about, you could go on for a while.
Yeah, and so like I've kind of heard how all these different people have
transitioned.
Yeah, transitioned, adapted, or failed to adapt, right? And it was interesting to hear you say, "Well, we're not going to put out a subpar product, right? We're gonna wait until we put out the subpar product," and that's my mentality as well. And I had a conversation with somebody, and I don't want to get too into it because it like kind of turned into an argument, and I'm like a little bit letting it go, but it was just like it at one of the restaurants of which I used to work, the standard was kind of just thrown out the window. And it was like, whatever we need to do to keep the doors open, but it wasn't like, even that is kind of like, well, that's not going to keep the doors open, right? Sure. And this is with food too, so it's like even a little bit more obvious even before you go in, right? Yeah. You put something on Instagram that looks like not good. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like we've had long conversations about how I plate food, and then once I plate the food, I'm not going to take the picture because I don't have a good enough camera on my phone. I'm going to make sure that Gavin does it. We get it in the right lighting, because that's what people see, and not only does it catch the eye if it's good, but it catches the eye if it's bad, right?
Eating uses all 5 senses.
Yeah, absolutely. So like, and so, me, I'm a little bit hypersensitive to it, but I realized that there were some people who are like, we're going to cut hours, we're going to cut labor, we're going to cut all this stuff, and then we're just going to use the pandemic as an excuse.
Restaurants are all different.
Yeah.
They're all different, and they're all owned by different people. That's who have their own reasons for doing things, and, it's tough because if you're not an owner, you're just like along for the ride kind of, right? So in that situation, what do? Do you say, okay, I see these standards slipping. Do I go somewhere with better standards? I think if you hold yourself in high esteem, the answer is yes. You can't work at a place where you see standards diminishing. That hurts you.
I agree. I agree with that. But I've been in numerous places where people always say you're as strong as your weakest link, right? But that there's many opportunities that I had to kind of carry things, right? Even as a line cook, right? Sure. The line cook is the one who's building the food. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, so it doesn't matter if their standards are low. My standards aren't low, right? So the food is going to be plated well, right? It's going to be balanced in flavor. It's not going to be over salted, right?
It'll be warm when it goes out.
Yeah, I mean it's like and so those things are you kind of come to the forefront, and then you just kind of impress your standards around the rest of the people.
If you can raise the people around you. I think I was talking a little bit more about if your management, is the one that's letting things slip. You can try, but at the end, like, it kind of is up to them. What the products you're getting, if you have enough of it, you're able to order how you want to order to put out the final product that you want, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And
you're absolutely right. You can raise the level of everyone around you.
And here's the interesting part about it is, like, it's the place that I'm talking about usually has such high standards, right? And it was just like a specific pandemic, like a pandemic mindset, right? Like you had this, Justus had this mindset of, we're going to make things work, right? But we're not going to shoot the moon until we know exactly what's going on and we can make sure our product is perfect.
Yeah.
This mindset was a little bit more of, standards are going to drop for this time period, and then we're going to recover when the pandemic is over. And that was kind of what you said about, I'm glad that we did all this stuff, because now that the pandemic is over, business is booming.
Yeah, absolutely. And we made sure we were setting ourselves up for success by when the pandemic was still going on back in February. People weren't even vaccinated yet. Spacing tables, washing your hands when you walked in, hand sanitizer, temperature checks. all that stuff was mandatory for people coming. Mask up service, obviously, everywhere. You obviously could take it off when you're obviously enjoying your libation, talking. But if you interact with staff, it was pretty hard line that you had your mask up. And I just think everybody should have been doing that. I think restaurants take it upon themselves to offer a service. Like, let's make people feel comfortable, but make yourself also comfortable to work there. I think it's people dehumanize restaurant workers often.
Yeah.
You are especially dehumanized when you have a mask on.
Yeah.
And so it's been very tough for a lot of
interesting.
people. Yeah.
That's an interesting point. I didn't even think about that, but I'll be straight with you. Once the pandemic happened, I was like, I'm not going back there right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not dealing with that. It's already a difficult enough environment, right? And then but I didn't think even about the dehumanization aspect of the masks being on the face, because that is something that I've seen in terms of like just horror stories of people in the front of house and how they're treated, and then
it's gotten worse over
kind of
the
expansion of that into the back of house, right? Like where the help. I mean, it's only been like the latter half of my career where we had even open kitchens, right? Like nobody even wanted to see us, kind of thing, right? That's because that's how dehumanization happens, is through separation, right?
Yeah.
But
they
then
don't
that
know where the
addition
food was even coming from at that point. In cuisine.
Yeah, if it was really, really spectacular, then you want to see the chef, and you want to have the chef prostrated in front of you like a parade, right?
Sushi chefs who make the rolls right in front of people.
Right.
Beautiful art. Done, which it has been art. There was no change. It was always an art, right?
Yeah.
I think chefs have always been artists. But you're right in the sense that people didn't want to see that art, and it's only been last, say 15, 20 years? I guess 20 years now.
Yeah, about that.
People really want to see. The chefs do their thing, if they're good.
That's the thing. And then for a while it was like, we want to see you, but we want to see you as like, I'm not going to get too self-deprecating here, but we want to see you as like kind of the prize that we paid for.
Sure.
Right? Like, we want you to come out and look at, the chef is saying hi to us, and like, look at how special we are. And that's how it was for a while. Good. And then, so, I mean, just back on subject in terms of masks, going back, it sounded like an absolute nightmare. And it sucks that front of house had to go through that, and they're probably going to continue to go through that, right? I mean, when
mandates were lifted.
Oh, they're lit. But when I go into places, usually, what was it like this last week that they were lifted?
Just 2 days ago.
Oh yeah, okay. So
for Minneapolis and St. Paul, obviously Governor Walz had lifted it for the state.
Yeah.
But then the two cities had put their mask mandates were still in effect. So we had continued to use mask service, and just now people are now allowed to come into Brother Justus with no mask. Yeah.
It's
always good to have one on you. But
absolutely,
we have some for you if you forget, and is a patio if you don't want to put one on at all, for any reason at all. Just stay outside.
Yeah.
Come inside, see this beautiful space that we have. It's gorgeous. There's a lot of thought put in the architecture too.
Dude, I can't wait to go. I haven't been able to make it yet. School's kind of crazy, and then
you're just cooling down now.
Oh, dude, I really am, and I'm doing the hot yoga multiple times a day. So well,
I have some cool NA beverages for you.
I will be there very soon. So, I promise you.
Of the 12 cocktails on our menu, 9 of them can be done NA. So there's options for everybody. We are 21 and over facility, like no kids. These NAs are for adults.
Yeah.
But they're damn good.
Yeah, that's for the people at home. Okay.
Yeah, I know this audience.
I'm a man. All right. No, I'm just playing.
I have a perfect pink orange drink for you.
Dude,
I mean, the one that comes with an umbrella. You'll love them.
Dude, absolutely. With the outfit I'm wearing, dude, that's absolutely what I need.
Outfit, yeah.
That's absolutely what I need.
Definitely.
I want to go for a multitude of reasons. For one, I think it's difficult for a lot of people in AA or NA to feel comfortable in that environment, right? Like for me, alcohol wasn't really my issue, right? I mean, it's one of my issues for sure. Like I'm an addict, but for a lot of people, they don't, they can't go into bars. They can't, because it's
trigger.
It's an absolute trigger. And
it's just, obviously tempting fate at some point with some people.
Totally. But being in the restaurant industry, it's like I have people who are really talented with making, a variety of drinks, not just mocktails, but like good tasting juices. And, I have this friend, Andrew, who's doing, it's called Heartbeat. It's just like a cold pressed beet juice that he's just like packed full of all these different like fantastic ingredients for you.
I'd love to do a beet juice cocktail.
Huh?
I would love to do a beet juice cocktail.
Dude, you should do it. Write it down.
We'll talk about it.
Write it down.
We can talk about it.
But yeah, I mean, you drink it and you feel a change as if you were to have, a drink with a small amount of alcohol in it, because it's just like there's so many biochemical changes that are going on because it's just packed full of all this stuff, right?
Right, a lot of nutrients, a lot of vitamins.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hypersensitive to it. I'm not saying like you're going to get drunk on life kind of thing, but I'm saying that I have been introduced, I mean, like you, Kyla, Seth, Andrew, all these people who just like wow me with a drink, the same way that I love to wow people with food.
Exactly.
And it sounds like, and I've seen some pictures, right? But it just sounds like an environment that screams quality instead of liquor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I was going to try and distinguish this point. I know for a fact that there was just so much thought put into how this space was set up to make it welcoming for everybody.
Yeah.
In the sense that it is being called Brother Justus, I believe most people think of a very religious affiliation, right? But we don't want to be overtly religious.
Yeah.
We are just believers in strong Benedictine values, just like Brother Justus, which I can get into the history about Brother Justus, very interesting guy. But just like be good to your neighbor, right? Help others, offer compassion when possible, be hospitable, all these wonderful things that just make you a good person. We're kind of dissolved into this space. So we have wheelchair accessible seating all over the place, the patio being wheelchair accessible as well, indoor and out. We have bottles, but they're not in your face. So I feel like there was some thought being put in there for people who are coming there specifically for NA cocktails. Maybe people who weren't looking to sit in a bar setting, but in a relaxed open space setting. So this is just not screaming like, here's like the Captain Morgan sign right in a bar window, a neon like sign. They're not like a bunch of different liquor bottles all on your back shelf, right? I mean, there's just 2 bottles because of how young we are as a company. We offer very few varieties of our whiskeys, so it's just like 3 options mainly most of the time. And so, being all that thought being put into it has turned it into a space that I feel like it should be welcoming to all. And I hope that comes through in everybody who walks through that door. Yeah.
Dude, that sounds great. I mean, because that's
the point.
That's dude, that sounds amazing. Because one of the big problems with alcoholism, right, is it's like when people have like food addiction, right? True. It's everywhere, right? It's everywhere.
And you got to eat.
Me, it's like I don't have a neon sign that's saying, "Hey, we got some good heroin over here, guy." I'm not like I don't walk out of the house and there's a big blaring sign that says,
trigger.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy. So it's nice to know that was in the thought process, and I can say that I mean, obviously, I didn't talk to the people who set it up, right? But it's pretty obvious that is in the process because that's what everybody does. So if you don't do that, it's a conscious decision.
It's a conscious decision that I hope think differently.
Yeah. So you said let's get into Brother Justus.
Brother Justus.
Is it pronounced Justus?
Justus.
Justus?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
all right.
yeah.
Get into it a little bit.
Brother Justus was a Benedictine monk who helped people all over Minnesota start distilling their own whiskey in safe, more discreet styles. He introduced the correct metals to use in stills and corrected people when they were using the poor ones, which would eventually lead to blind death
Yeah.
his fatalities. Terrible sickness, right?
Yeah.
He would obviously give out recipes, how much you should use. This was when there was a surplus of grain, in my understanding. So people had all this grain, but nothing to do with it. It was
Right.
it was a very the cost had dropped. So the surplus, what were they going to do? They could make some moonshine out of it. You can barrel that moonshine, and that makes it, a whiskey. So he had a big hand in starting like all these small distilleries, just family distilleries mostly, all over Minnesota, like something like 15,000 distilleries. Yeah, not like just a few. From my understanding, it's
wow,
it's hundreds of thousands. Yeah.
So that's serious history behind the name.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
And poignant history too.
This man obviously was a devoutly religious man, and our owner Phil Seeger grew up and admired those values and wanted to eventually put it all into a bottle and have this thing that is for everyone. That's based on being good to everyone, and tastes good, hopefully, to everyone too, and any of its various forms. This whiskey's great by itself. It's great with a little sugar and some bitters in it, and it's great if I mix it in with a bunch of juices or simple syrups that I come up with. We have herbaceous cocktails, fruity cocktails, nutty cocktails. We run the gambit. We have it all.
So
we try to, at least.
So I have a quick question for you. Is there just one whiskey, or is there like different aged whiskeys? Are there different iterations, different barrels, or specifically for Brother Justus?
We have a couple different iterations. Yeah, Brother Justus is in the process of making a couple different whiskeys, and then hopefully some other things to branch out from whiskey in the near future. We started with an American single malt, which is just using barley, only barley, aged about 4 to 6 months in the barrel. And this whiskey has really sugar notes like caramel, butterscotch, heavy sugars. So it plays well in kind of those cocktails that lean a little bit towards the sugar side, just a touch, right? So the old-fashioned, the Sazerac things that really let the whiskey shine, mostly with just a little bit of a twist, like just a little bit of a dash of bitters.
Right. Elevation.
Just a little elevation. Right? It's a good sipping whiskey too.
Yeah.
It's still young, so it has a little bit of that burn. And then we evolved to make a year-long whiskey, which is the Blessed. If I can move this without knocking stuff over.
Yeah, show it up to the camera.
Ooh,
there you go. Yeah.
So these bottles were actually set aside, or I should say these barrels were set aside, and they were blessed by a Benedictine monk who comes down from Brother Justus Monastery. Yeah, usually done once a year, and will bless a couple barrels for us. So we let that sit for quite a bit longer, a year, and the notes will change obviously year to year, just as whiskey will, depending on what the barrel is, what the season was that you harvested the grain. All that's different, small little changes.
Yeah.
This one in particular had like a really nice lemongrass note to it. A little bit of that nuttiness had evolved from the sugar in the American that I'd spoken about, but it was a little bit more complex, smoother because it had aged in the barrel a little bit longer. And then the last one that I'll talk about is this one here in the black bottle. This is my favorite. This is a cold peated whiskey. It's the first cold peated whiskey in the world. No one else is doing it in this fashion, right? So we do have a patent pending in the works for this process. It's an infusion of peat, just like the Scots are doing with their Scotch. They burn it. We're doing a cold infusion, so the flavor is different. I like to say it's more of like a distant cousin of a Scotch, rather than trying to compare it too closely, because you say Scotch, people have this very, very specific idea of what a peated Scotch tastes like. Very woody, very smoky.
Yeah.
Right? This is different. This is more natural, more earthy.
Umami.
You nailed it. Mushroom, umami.
Wow.
It's very, very complex.
That's so cool.
I wish you could have a drink. I know we are not going to, but You'll have to just trust me that this stuff is, it's really, really great. It works in a bunch of different cocktails. You could go sweet with it. You could go herbaceous. You can go savory. You can just drink it by itself. You could, it's pretty versatile.
That's so cool. And you got a patent.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, man. I didn't know any of this. This is really cool.
So this one is definitely going to go places, I think. That's if I had to put my money on it. The cold peated is definitely going places. Minnesota has thousands and thousands of tons of peat up in Aiken County. So we are able to mine that. We work with a company up there. The advantage that we have in this process in particular is that we're able to reuse the peat, in my understanding. We'll filter it out.
Wait, what do you mean?
Yeah, so the peat gets broken up, but it actually isn't destroyed, as you might say, like when the Scots are burning theirs, right? To impart that
so then you'll have first peat and you'll have a second peat whiskey, and they'll probably taste very different.
I don't know. I'm not sure if that's in the work yet. That's not something I'm privy to. But if they have plans for doing that, my understanding is that it will allow us to conserve the amount of peat that we do have.
Yeah.
Whereas the Scots might eventually run out of it. I mean, it's getting harder and harder to find, I'm sure. Or they might have to change up their process. Whereas hopefully we can keep this process sustainable, which is always another thing that we have in the back of our mind, sustainability. For years and years and years, generations, hopefully.
That's super cool. You know how my mind works. I'm just immediately going to all these things that this could be paired with. I mean, you've had my cooking many times.
Oh, delicious.
I'm big on fermenting mushrooms. I remember the first day that Aaron showed, because I had already started kind of my fermentation process and playing around with it when I was at Victory. But when I met Aaron at the Lexington, he showed me these mushrooms that he had lacto fermented, right?
Yeah.
Lacto fermented, just like this book. And it was so phenomenal. It was just it was kind of like a new spice almost.
Yeah.
And then there was, you've had them, right? We did them often at Public, and it's just the
it's
amount,
a door that opens, right?
Dude, it really is.
That's what they're trying to explain.
So when you're talking about the umami of cold peat, oh my god, that's just because I will say this. I think a lot of people are kind of hung up on smoke, right?
We don't smoke anything at our restaurant,
dude.
There's not a smoked cocktail in our restaurant, which is different. I came from the Hog, and the Hog smokes 3 of their cocktails. I'm not knocking smoking cocktails,
right?
I think some of them have their place, but just something we chose to stay away from. Being in the space that we're in, didn't need to burn some stuff. We can keep the torches away, maybe in the back house. And it's been doing fine just without it. Because, moving away from a smoky Scotch, talking about different flavors, more of an earthier flavor rather than the burned flavor.
It's new, and people,
absolutely.
and it sounds phenomenal, right? That's from a chef's perspective, it sounds phenomenal, and usually if it sounds good, right,
you can work it.
You can work it so that it's good, right? It's not always good the first time you make it, but that means that there's something there, and it sounds like after this half-hour conversation that I've had with you, it sounds like they have their shit together so well that what's coming out.
That's the plan.
And if you say it's good too, is I think that you have a great palate. So, I'm just intensely excited about that.
I wasn't a whiskey guy. I really wasn't. Growing up, I grew up working on hop farms in central New York, and so I was much more lenient towards beer. I worked a little bit for Saranac Brewery out in upstate New York, which is a very, very big brewery, and producing that kind of stuff, I just kind of gravitated towards beers. I didn't drink much underage until I got to college. Rugby, rugby indoctrinates you quickly.
Oh, yeah.
And
ears getting torn off in the middle of the game. It doesn't matter.
Well, you need a beer after that. Or 2. But the idea of drinking good beer stayed with me. So even in college, when everyone else was drinking, Bud Lights and stuff like that, I was still drinking Saranac and decent beers for the most part. And then then it transformed to wine. 22, your palate starts to evolve. I felt like I could start to taste difference in wines and notes and their aromatics and things like that. I started getting more into food around that age. about 22, 23, started working in restaurants, 5 days a week out in Boston. And then eventually got more into spirits as I started to bartend at Public out here back in 2017 when I finally moved out to Minnesota, because I have not been here very long.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's just coming up on 4 years now.
Nice.
In August. So yeah, it's kind of a weird feeling. I never really expected to be in Minnesota, but I love it. But where I was going with that is just your tastes evolve and your interests evolve. Mm-hmm. And so now I've evolved into learning more about bourbons and whiskeys, single malt whiskeys, Irish whiskeys, scotches. I worked at Handsome Hog before I was at Brother Justus, and they have a glorious wall of whiskey whenever you go. And they're very knowledgeable about that. So I started to learn more, but it still wasn't my thing. And now at Brother Justus, because I've become so immersed in it, while Handsome Hog is definitely a bourbon bar, they obviously have to cater to everybody. They're not just a whiskey company. So that's the difference. You're still kind of pulled in all these directions. And now working for Brother Justus, I'm super honed in on just hopefully learning as much about the process of making whiskey from grain to glass as much as possible.
Well, you've been able to teach me a decent amount about it in a short period of time, so I think that shows that your specialization is starting to take hold, and that's very cool. It sounds like you're really enjoying what you're doing, and it sounds like a great place to work, man.
Definitely.
So you said you're the what is your
assistant bar manager now?
Assistant bar manager.
Yeah.
That's awesome, dude.
Just make sure the tasting room runs right. Yeah, work on cocktails. I love the R&D aspect of it. So we got some new menus coming out, in a couple weeks to a month, and we'll keep on working on the next season because we're just always constantly doing that. And as I was mentioning earlier, Handsome Hog has that variety. We, being just a whiskey company right now, just have our whiskeys. The hope is, though, soon to have fortified wines, vermouths, maybe a botanical gin being distilled back there, and eventually doing some different stuff. Being able to make Manhattans, because that's not on our menu right now because you need a vermouth. And so because of the Minnesota liquor laws, you're only able to have liquor that you produce in a distillery. So we needed to do a production first. We couldn't just go out and buy those items. So that's kind of the difference. And that's
if you're doing shit like that,
can you imagine what our vermouth's gonna taste like?
Oh my god, dude.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my
it's
god!
It's gonna be crazy. And the botanical gin. Can you imagine what we're gonna be able to do?
Oh my god! And then
so just all these things on the horizon sounds great to me,
dude. And then you do a menu with that, and you're cooking with those.
We don't have an on-site kitchen at the moment.
No, I know, right. but you hear what I'm saying, right?
But I'm hearing what you're saying. These guys have you've seen how much thought they put in everything else.
Yeah.
They're obviously putting the thoughts of what's gonna work with all that stuff too. Yeah. So I only see great things for Brother Justus.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
Let's see what time we're at.
I have no idea.
Oh yeah, we're at about 51 minutes. So I think it's a good time to start doing your shelf. What's on the shelf, man? What's on the shelf, man? We'll do your shelf, and then
is that where I just go over what I have on my shelf?
Yeah, man. We just bring it down. We show it to the camera. It's about you. It's about whatever everything that you have on the shelf. And if you don't want to bring it down too, just want to point it out.
I will leave it up there.
Yeah,
I've got it nicely propped.
Yeah, I like it.
Couple options in terms of apparel from Brother Justus. We keep it simple. We keep it tasteful. Just black and white options. A little bit of a logo on the chest. They're very nice. Nice T-shirts.
Yeah. Do you know the material by chance?
I do not.
It's not a big deal.
Not a big deal.
You know all about your whiskey. I'm not expecting you to know the polyester count.
We have
or the
things
thread
like
count.
Sweatshirts too, though. We have hats. We sell our aprons, all done by great people making great products.
Yeah.
We do have all of our glassware for sale as well. Pretty much anything for sale. Brother Justus, you walk in, you say, I really like that.
Yeah.
Someone will come up with a price tag for you, and you can walk out with it.
Cool.
Other things I have on here, more bottles of whiskey, of course. What I did is we just recently had a couple sales. So we did a release of our blessed whiskey, but one was going to be a single barrel, 242. This barrel in particular was just beautiful. They loved it when it came out. And so I purchased one of those. I had the distillers sign it. And then I also have their barrel strength behind me as well, which was a different release. We only did 1 day sales of those because we only had a limited amount. So people had to show up, purchase it, and that was a one-time thing.
Yeah.
In the future, we're going to release more of our blessed, is my understanding. And so we'll have 3 for sale. Right now we only sell the American and the cold peated in the stores.
Okay.
I also have just some cocktail books. I have things like the Dead Rabbit, company which is a bar in New York, just some of the godfathers of cocktail making, who do a great job and inspire me in a couple different ways, to both elevate what you're doing, but also just with your cocktail ideas too. You see their cocktails and you're like, oh, everyone's just doing a twist on that. You can think like, why don't I do a twist that no one's ever thought of? Or you can think like, why don't I take it back to the basics? And so reading through those books, those types of books, those cocktail books, really excites me.
Yeah, let's. I wanna tack on to this subject, right? Because you've worked with me for. We have found out we don't know how long we worked together. Let's just say 18 months.
Do you want to say when you started at Public? Do you know that date?
It was.
Because this would be easy to find.
It was late summer of 2019.
Okay. So, yeah, we probably worked together for 8 months.
Yeah. Okay, so 8 months. Yep. Okay? Felt like longer. No, I'm just
sure
like...
did. You put me through the ringer.
No, but you know how if you saw me and I had any kind of downtime, which is, rare in our industry, but even when I didn't, there was usually a cookbook open, or I had a cookbook open on the line, right? And it was like... I think that some people think that recipe building is like, oh, I see this recipe, I'm going to do this recipe, verbatim from the book. Where it's like, for that Valentine's Day menu, I had just gotten one of Thomas Keller's sous chefs was a Greek chef, and he opened his own, I don't know if it won a Michelin star or not, but he opened his own Greek restaurant, right? So he had all these different variations of like classical Greek cooking, right? So, for instance, there was a rabbit dish, right? And the rabbit dish had, I think it was some kind of like tomato, maybe like a very olivey, puttanesca like kind of like a very tart and bitter sauce underneath it, and then in another page of another book I saw a spiced wine, right, which is very, very great. Like the whole like there was lots of cinnamon in it. There was like
cloves, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean it was just like very kind of back of the mouth, aromatic, heavy, so that when you do eat that rabbit, right, all of that. Like I don't want to say like I don't even know how to explain the flavor, the difference between like a rabbit and a chicken, but it's just like that more complex, let's just say earthy for lack of a better term, that comes through, that dark meat flavor comes through because your aromatics have been opened up, right? But that wasn't the recipe in the book.
No, absolutely
right?
not.
So like when you're like, yeah, let's press the envelope, right, but at the same time let's go back to the basics. That's absolutely what a chef does. I love to hear that you're doing that.
I think a lot of people, they've gone really experimental already, as we've seen food evolve tremendously, over the years, to what they can do now with gastromolecularology and all that kind of stuff. And what I think is now interesting to people is if you make something really simplistic but complex and articulate, or if you go out of this world and just like hit him with something crazy out of left field. That's what people really respond to nowadays.
I definitely agree. I think
that's what gets you famous. I'll say that
for sure. I mean that's
Instagrammable.
Those two things are they're in a balance, and we live in the dialectic between the two, right? What I would say is like my trajectory, right? That I'm going back to school kind of like for some, I talk to people about it all the time and they're like, oh wow, that's so different from what you've been doing for the last, I'm like, it is absolutely 100% inspired by every single day that I've worked in the kitchen.
Right.
What I'm going to school for is 100%, 100% about my journey with food, right? So like, I think before it used to be, well, not before. I think that just there's certain people who like you look at Alenia, right? It's an experience where he's absolutely pushing the boundaries of what we can do scientifically with molecular gastronomy to give you a crazy experience, right? I'm going to give you this in a gel capsule, then smell this, and I'm going to give you the same thing, and it's going to taste like something different because of the way that your olfactory senses work, right? That shit's wild, right? But then you also have, you have places like, well, let's just say the French Laundry, I think, is a good, is a good, like, hearkening back to tradition, freshness, right, and like simple elegance, right?
That comes to mind with barbecue too. Barbecue, while it's been able to evolve a little bit with how you cook things, to a much more like scientific level, I feel like wrapping up a brisket with some seasoning on it is still simple and done beautifully by the right people. And then you can specialize in the details of that process, and it becomes it becomes this micro specialization, right? Of like, okay, we had it in for 2 hours and 22 minutes and 13 seconds instead of dropping the heat 25 degrees every 20 minutes. Dude, now we do it every 10 minutes. Now we do it every 15 minutes. All that kind of stuff.
When I see a book, I've seen various different versions of this, but the one I'm trying to remember the name of the book. I want to say it's The Science of Food. I'll talk to my grandma because she's the one who gave it to me, and then I'll paste the link in the bottom. But he had eggs, right? And he had the eggs cut open in a picture, and it was like one egg at 15 seconds, right. And then all the way to as hard boiled as you could get an egg, and you saw the differences in
different
the
ways
egg.
to make a chocolate chip cookie. Baking soda, no baking soda, all those weird things. I don't even like baking chocolate chip cookies. They're not for me. But just the ways that you can put a variant on something like a chocolate chip cookie. You're talking about the same thing. Different levels of experimentation.
It's a true love. It's true art, and it's a true science. I mean, there's people who get PhDs in food science, and there's people who study their whole lives and about one aspect of one culture of cooking. What I have started to really, I mean, not just started, I'm like well into my journey of is the actual ingredients that you use and how you change those ingredients to become higher quality, and the connection between good tasting things and healthy food. Right? Because when I grew up, and I'm sure this is the same for you, it was one or the other. Right? Like, you can, this was kind of before all the documentaries about fast food came out. I mean, like, people knew it was bad for you, right? But they weren't like, it wasn't demonized. And so it was like, you either eat good food or you eat healthy food that tastes awful. And so you have to be this like Spartanic human being.
There's a lot of home cooking that I remember, I'm sure. Going out to fast food stuff, just for me personally, didn't do it a ton. Where I grew up, rural, just growing up.
But even there, it's like there's this idea of like you either love pie and you love throwing. I mean, I remember my grandfather who was who grew up on a farm in Shakopee, and he was talking about like how good cooks just shove butter and stuff, and
salt,
and that's the thought process. Is like it's either a butter and salt or there's no butter and salt, and that's the healthy option. Where there's like, when the reality is like, no, this squash was grown in a way where it wasn't mass produced. It's not 90% water. There's actually it's not just this carb sugar loaded a vegetable, because there's so many different like fibrous materials and organic they talk about phytonutrients and all these other kinds of things that your body breaks down. It helps the microbiology of your stomach, right? So the differences between this monocropped basically transport for water and sugar and this actual piece of food, that's my mind flipped kind of when I was at Victory, right? A little bit when I was at D-Spot, but when I hit Victory, it's like, what he was doing with his pigs, like, it tasted better.
Yeah.
It just did.
It just did.
Like, for a lot of people, like, this conversation is like, okay, well, you're just some sommelier trying to sell me healthy food. I get it. You know, I don't taste you will taste the difference. And I think the reason that this movement is really pushing forward is because there's a noticeable difference in taste. Right, where the healthier option, the usually the option that is better for the environment, tastes better.
Yeah,
and that's kind of like what I have. You know, I've rolled into a little bit of just more of the scientific aspect because I think that's just how my brain really. You know, I love getting into
the scientific portions of it for you. For me, it was just you're speaking. You know, just like what I remember growing up, organic. You know, growing up in upstate New York, it's farmland.
Yeah.
So just like you just stop at roadside farm stands, pick up your vegetables. It's pick that day, the freshest you can imagine, right, off of some decent soil, good soil, and yeah, I mean you're definitely getting a different quality when you go to the grocery store, and you can tell I can tell the difference between organic and non-organic for some items. Others a little harder, obviously, but. You can also tell a difference when it's just fresh. You go pick those apples, you know, at the apple orchard during the fall. It's better than the bag. It just always is.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah, because the bag was
mind-blowing.
flown in from California, or I don't even know where they grow apples. Washington State grows apples. I do know where they grow apples. They grow like the most apples.
We grow a decent amount of apples here as well.
We do, just not as much as Washington State.
Yeah, that's
my
true.
understanding.
So, good book for you.
Yeah.
Oh shoot. Oh, The Botany of Desire, by Michael Pollan. He talks about the how the growing, selling, and then distilling of apples helped shape America. It's one of the things that really helped shape America. He talks about how human beings have kind of changed the genomics and things of that nature of different foods, right? I think he went into marijuana a little bit too, and hemp and stuff like that. But that's a good one to get on. I think that you'd find that really, really interesting. To bring it back to Brother Justus, you know, you talked about that sustainability aspect, and that I love when that is applied to things that aren't just strictly food, right? Because food, it's kind of an easy argument to make, right? Especially after the last 15 years of documentaries coming out about animal abuse, you know, CAFOs, right? Concentrated feeding operations of cows, you know, the greenhouse gas emissions of raising, especially bovines, you know, but when you get to something like this, I mean, peat is a very important, like it's very, very vital to many environments throughout the world, and
there's a finite amount too.
Yeah,
you know, you don't have more peat in a couple of years. It's not growing like in that type of sense. Brother Justus does try and be as sustainable as possible. All the items are from Minnesota. I don't think I mentioned that earlier, but the water that we use is from the Mississippi headwaters. You know, the white oak that we use is from western Minnesota. The barley is all from southern Minnesota. Everything,
that's
literally
so cool.
Everything that goes in that bottle.
I love that because there's lots of places that are almost 100% local.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like almost 100% local, and then they get one thing from U.S. Foods. I've been guilty of that multiple times, right? Sure. You know, we're gonna do this and this and this and this from, you know, Minnesota Forager, and then I'm gonna ferment these blueberries that we got from U.S. Foods. You know, it's like so. That's fair. And there was always, you know, there's reasoning for that, but I love when it's like, this is purely Minnesotan. This is and I talk about it constantly on this show. To have culture, right, you have to have the infrastructure of that culture, right? And that's an example of that infrastructure. This is literally the tiara of Minnesota that this whiskey is built off of.
And so many people, you know, hopefully being put to work, you know, in order to produce this, you know, is a great thing as well in Minnesota.
So where is it sold?
Surdix, Edina Liquors. I was going to come up with a list of it and rattle off a bunch for you. I didn't.
That's
Ambibious.
Fine. Ambibious? Yeah.
Ambibious.
Okay, sweet.
Yep. So the liquor stores will have the larger bottles, yay high, and they'll be a little more expensive, but I tell you that they're worth it.
Yeah.
If you'd like to come by the tasting room and try it for yourself, come do a flight. We offer flights, so you get to try a little bit of each. We also sell the small bottles if you want to just dip your toe into what whiskey's like. I think it's a whiskey for whiskey lovers, whiskey novices, and then if you're someone who likes to make cocktails at home, for someone who likes whiskey cocktails too.
Dude, awesome, man. Awesome. This has been a great episode, educational. It was just good to see you. I know that you have places to be. I want to thank you, everybody. Taylor Davis, Brother Justus. This is the meat and potatoes, people. Thank you so much.
One thing, Boomin' Barbecue, opening up soon. Go check it out. We talked about Ambibulous. They're parked out right outside of it. Go get some barbecue. Dude,
they're killing it. I think they're doing beef cheek right now. They really hammer it home.
For those of you who know, who got it last summer, it's back.
Yeah.
It's bigger. It's better.
Dude, so check it out. Ambibulous, Boomin' Barbecue, Brother Justus.
Yeah.
This has been Minnesota Well Done. Thank you guys. I'll see you next week.
Appreciate it.
Lovers remember my old arms are burning. My memory, my shovel writes a new song. I can almost hear them singing along as I keep digging away. Her love rubbed me raw, methamphetamine, alcohol, if only left me stay. Buried in the backyard, long after gone to my childhood dark bodies. Some of them were my friends. Some were more like enemies. Shouldn't matter now to them. Should've said something much to me. Last night I took apart most everything in your garage and got myself some dollars and cents. Taken off to St. Paul, where I will surely spend it all on Hope Street, the last house on the block.